Amen. So let me turn your attention to the text. The text says, Ephesians 4, verse 1 through 4 says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of your vocation wherewith you are called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, even as ye are called in one hope of your calling. Can I go just a little bit further? One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all, and through all, and in you all. Thus ends the reading. I think that's enough for tonight. As I take a look at this text, I see in this chapter 4 of the text. I need y'all to bear with me. I'm more of a exegetical type preacher. And so I see in the text that Paul is alternating between declarations of what God has done and how the Ephesians are to behave themselves. Paul had to let the folks know in chapters 1, 2, and 3 all the good things God had done. Sometimes we have to be reminded of where God has brought us from. We're dealing with a group of people that are under Roman government and rule. And we have the Jews on one hand, and we have the Gentiles on the other hand. And the Jews are God's chosen people. They are God's chosen people. And the Gentiles, God had not chosen them, but when we leave Old Testament theology and we walk over into New Testament theology, when Jesus hung on the cross, he said, whoever will, let him come. So now he opened the door for everybody to be saved. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew or Greek or Gentile. All that matters is that you confess Jesus as your Lord and as your Savior. And so now we got issues going on in Ephesus now. Ephesus, the church in Ephesus, is in an uproar now because you got Jewish folks telling the people that are Gentiles that in order to be saved, you need to convert to Judaism first, because after all, Jesus was a Jew. So now they're saying you have to be converted first. So what Paul does when he writes this letter from a prison cell. He writes this letter. He's been incarcerated and arrested for not anything that he's done evil, but for just preaching the gospel. And so Paul has to let the people know where God had brought you from. Paul had to say, now do you remember when you didn't have any money, God still kept you? Do you remember when you didn't have any food on your table? God still provided. If you ever been to college and you didn't know where the tuition money was coming from, but yet you sit here today, graduated with a degree, you ought to tell the Lord, thank you. Ever been on a job and you didn't qualify for the position that you're in or that you have, but God saw favor in your life and put you where you weren't qualified to be. Somebody ought to tell the Lord, thank you. And every now and then, God has to call our minds back to what he's done. Can I take my time? So, Paul is going back and forth, these declarations of what God has done and how the folks ought to live their lives. They ought to live their lives in thanksgiving. They ought to tell the Lord, thank you for every day of their life. But I like what Paul does is he deals with it in 3 sections. He deals with it, he deals with unity in the church. He deals with ministry in the church. And he deals with doctrinal stability in the church. And as we take a look at the text, we'll find that there are 7 ones in the text. 7 ones. If you read what it says, there is one body and one spirit, even as you are called in one hope of your calling. Verse 5, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. Verse 6, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. There are 7 ones in this description as it deals with the unity of the church. 7 being the number of completion of the perfectness. The first 3 ones, let's look at what it talks about. It looks at the present state of the church of Ephesus. It's looking at the present state of the church. He says the church is one body, alive with creative vitality, of one spirit, animated by one hope, which the Spirit inspires and guarantees. 3 ones. The church is one body. We may have different function in the body, but we're all one body. We're in the church, and I can't do your job and you can't do my job. The Bible says abide in your own calling. The problem we have in the church is you got ushers trying to tell choir members what to do. That ain't your lane. Stay in your lane. Problem we got in the church is we got the musicians trying to tell the pastor what to do. You were called just to pick the keyboard. Do your job. Leave pastoring to the pastor. We got some issues in the church because people are all over the place and nobody knows where they ought to be. But I come to tell you tonight that if you don't know what your position is, you're going to learn it tonight. Yeah. So, the church is one body. It's alive with creative vitality. Creative vitality, which means that whatever the church needs, she'll birth. Y'all ain't feeling me. Y'all ain't feeling me. The church is referred to in the female state because females have the ability to birth. Men can't do that. Females have the ability to birth. And so earth is called Mother Earth. Jesus calls the church his bride. Calls it his bride because when he impregnates the bride is going to birth everything that the church is ever going to need. That's why we don't have to look outside of the church for anything. I come to tell you that we got a lot of bastardized ministries in the church that didn't come from the church but came out the nightclub. We got a whole lot of bastardized ministries that didn't come in from out of the church but came out of the street corner. And we want to be relevant to the world, but we'll lower our standards to say to get folks inside the church. But the devil is a lie, because whatever God has for the church, he'll equip the church with. Whatever God has for the church, he'll birth it through the church. Y'all ain't hearing what I'm saying. What I'm trying to tell you is God is tired of you going out there committing adultery outside of the church. Everything you need is in the God. Everything you need is in the house. Stop looking over there at the harlot and stay. Seems like everything they do in the club, somebody want to bring it to the church. Say, we ought to do this in the church. Everything Deacon Lee don't fit in the church. Everything don't belong in the church. Bible says that we need to be separated and come out from amongst them. There must be a difference between clean and unclean. There must be a difference between holy and unholy. And some of the stuff we're doing ain't holy in the church. We wonder how come there's nobody coming in the church. Why would they come when there's no difference in here than it is out there? Can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? Can I exegete the text? This word comes to mind called animate. Animate, A-N-I-M-A-T-E, means to make alive. You grew up in Disney Channel time. We used to come in from school, and my grandmama had big, thick peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for us and a cold glass of milk. My milk was always a different color than my siblings' milk because I can't digest milk. So I had to have that pet milk. And when you pour it, it ain't white, it's beige. And so we would get right in front of the television. We would watch the Disney Hour. And what the animators do is they take drawn art and bring it to life. They take their art and make it appear or look like it's moving. Before they bring it to life, it's just lines scribbled on a paper. And so when we are animated, it is God putting his life in us. Genesis says that God said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. And that's exactly what happened. And man was made in God's image and in his likeness. And man was just laying there. Didn't have no spirit, didn't have a soul. But the Bible declares that God blew this word called pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-E, pneuma. God breathed the breath of life in man, and man became a living soul.